I had to stick my head in the way a few times here. Let me know if I'm in the way though.
Don't worry.
All right, so it's powering up, and
How did you power it up?
there's just a power button over here on the side.
Everybody cool?
Okay, so we can see,
no!
we can see it's already running timecode, but we won't worry about that for now. Okay, I got to stick my head down here for a second. All right, I'm just gonna go into the menu for the time being. The menu has something like 90 options or something, so it's a pretty elaborate menu. Hit the menu button once, and it brings up this screen, and you can go down or up the numbers by hitting the menu button or the button below it. It's called the HDD or hard drive button. So let's go through some of these options from the top. Quick setup, we could go to that, but I always am scared of quick setups because that's what somebody thinks it should be set up as, not what you guys necessarily want it to be set up as. So we're gonna set it up manually.
What would quick setup be?
Let's see, if you hit up quick setup, they have, oops, I went the wrong way, X out of that, back to menu. Oops, I'm all backwards.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Is quick setup something that, let's say, a previous mixer did for the previous shoot, and that's what he or she told the recorder to remember?
I don't think there's a preset, I think it's
Or
a factory.
It's a default?
It's a factory default
Okay,
preset.
good.
So here, we'll click on that now. So there's an option for factory settings. They have one for film settings. Who knows what that could be? It could be the film
Probably
settings you want.
29,
It's probably 2997. Or it could be
23,
239976. But who knows for sure?
Right.
It's probably right, but I think it's better to check it manually and make sure. It's really easy to do.
Whatever you do, make sure it's not 24p.
Okay, so there is a user setting, but you have to save it to an external compact flash card and all this kind of stuff.
Like
so
an SD card or an actual flash?
An actual flash card, which would be your record card, which is kind of
So-
bound to be formatted.
And that, the flash card goes in here. What?
Oh, yeah,
How
sorry.
many gigs do you, for a day's shoot, do you feel?
4 gigs should be plenty.
Oh.
At 48K, 4 gigs should hold maybe 6 or 7 hours of audio.
So does this record SD or CF cards?
CF.
Okay.
The CF card slot is in the back, and it's kind of awkward to get to this.
So is this, so can you, at 48K, do you, does it default to 24-bit or?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good.
And we'll double check those settings as well each time.
Okay.
Okay, so the CF card slot is back here underneath. It's kind of awkward to get to, but you can get in
You
there.
guys can see that?
It's hidden in there. It takes a little bit of effort. It's easier to get it in than it is to get it out. Okay, so chances are the quick setup for film settings will work fine, but I think, like I said, I think it's better to do it manually because it's real easy. Firewire connection. This has a Firewire port on it, so you can hook it up directly to a computer and transfer files. But I think that can be useful, but it's probably easier to pull the compact flash card out most of the time. Not always, but it's a great fallback in case you need to do that. Okay, next up is record sample rate. So who knows what sample rate we should always record video at?
48.
48. People are saying 48, and that's right.
48K, 24.
48K 24-bit is what you always want to do. You might find some feature films working at a 96 kilohertz sample rate that uses up twice as much audio storage space. But for pretty much everything you need to do, 48K is great. There's no problem with that at all. Besides, Blu-ray players are the only ones that can play back a 96 kilohertz sample rate.
So could we record at 96 kilohertz if we want to eventually release on Blu-ray?
Well, you can release 48K on Blu-ray as well, and probably a solid 80 or 90% of releases are at 48K on Blu-ray. That's just too much hassle. especially when you're talking about a film mix with 300 channels operating at 96 kilohertz. It's a bear for a computer to handle.
Does it affect much quality?
Not realistically.
Okay.
Maybe if you're in the context of intense music recording, say you're doing a classical album, that's one thing. But for film, it's gonna be great. Okay, so it's record sample rate. Let's use the little check button. And we have some options. We have 47.952, 48, and so on. That's for pull up and pull down recording, which if you want to get into that later, we can talk about that later, but for now, we're just going to set that to 48K. So I'm going to scroll through. There's other options, 88.2, 96, 176, 192, and all kinds of crazy sample rates. We don't care. Go to 48K, baby. I can't see myself. There we go. And then I'm going to click check. Okay. So we set our sample rate to 48K.
Okay, which button was that?
The little squiggle button. You can see that there's a little software
Oh, okay.
display
There
of
you go.
what the
Okay.
buttons do. Up and down arrow, check, and
Okay.
X to get out of the menu. Okay, next up we have record bit depth. Let's hit the check button for that. We can record at either 16 or 24.
And that does actually make a difference.
There's no higher bit depth?
No. 16-bit recordings have about 65,000 levels of loud versus soft. 24-bit recordings have about 2.4 million levels of loud and soft. It's way higher resolution. Always record at 24-bit. Pro audio will always be at 24-bit. Okay, so we select 24. Good. Next up, oh, go ahead.
No, you go, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I was just gonna say something that's actually kind of foolish right now. So
Okay.
It's unnecessary right now.
No problem. Next up is record file type. Whoops, wrong button. Record file type, check. We have wave poly, wave mono, FLAC, MP3s in various sizes, and MP2s in various sizes. What do you think?
Wave, poly? Wave.
Wave poly, you're right. Never ever use MP3s in Pro Audio.
It'll
What
take
is
you right
FLAC?
straight to 16 also. It might as well be 16 bit.
Absolutely. FLAC is a lossless audio codec. It is possible to use it, but very few programs read it.
Right,
Could you-
okay. I had never heard that before.
It gives you a lot of fun, exactly. So wave poly versus wave mono is important, because if you record it as a wave mono file, it would combine the two files. Well, I have to see how it works exactly. I haven't done that before in this recorder, but it might record the left and right channel into one mono file, which wouldn't be great.
That'd be sad.
So, yes, it would.
End of the day, that would be sad.
Mm-hmm. It would be very sad at the end of the day. So wave poly is always your best bet, and everything can read poly, wave poly files, no problem at all. Okay, so we'll select that. Good. Record media select. Okay, let's see what the options are here. Well, we have two choices: external hard drive, or external hard drive and CF. So we could hook up a FireWire drive and put it in the bag and have that as a backup recorder or an extra record drive, or your main record drive, although it would need its own power and stuff like that. One of the really cool things that this can do is it can record to two storage formats at once, which is great for backing stuff up. You never know when a hard drive's going to fail. So you could bring a FireWire drive along and plug your compact flash in, record to both simultaneously, or just record to one or the other.
I'm a big believer personally in redundancy, the same way with the C300, with the two CF cards. So that's just me. If I were going to shoot all day and I've gotten everything together and really done my work and we did great work for the day, I would just really like to know that I had redundant recording personally. But that's me in a too many situations that have gone bad.
Sure. Yeah, drives can fail. So having a redundant FireWire drive could be a useful thing to have in this kit. Compact flash are pretty stable, fortunately, though. Okay. I'll X out of that.
And only 4 gig, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that'll last you a really long time.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
Of course, an 8 gig's always better.
Yeah.
More is better.
Expensive.
Expensive, exactly. Okay. At the same time, if you could go to Best Buy and buy a 1 terabyte FireWire drive for $100 and have a terabyte.
Yeah.
It'll last you for every project you ever do
It's a great idea.
in class. So
It's a
Would
great
you want a
idea.
dedicated FireWire drive for?
yeah, I'd want a dedicated one for this.
That would be really smart.
That could be a good thing to do. There's small, rugged, portable ones
I
that you can
have
get.
one in here, it works beautifully.
Great.
So it has orange around it and you
Yeah,
can drop it.
it's exactly the one.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, there's about $120 at Best Buy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Doesn't matter how they're formatted, they're like Mac or PC.
I think that this will format it for you, and I believe that it's probably formatted well. I don't know that answer actually, to be sure.
Okay.
I've used the FireWire drives with it before, and I've only used it with Macs, and it was never ever an issue. But I actually have opened it up on a PC as well. So
Okay.
Right, those Lacey's, they
Mhm.
like Mac, I think.
yeah, they do prefer Mac usually.
Yeah, I
Make
think,
sure not to
but
use
I'm
it
not,
on Mac
I'm not
first.
positive, guys.
It's worth a try.
Yeah.
We've been experimenting, if I can interject, with exFAT formatting, which is a new file format that supposedly will work with both Mac and PCs.
It
And
actually does
students-
for a fact. It does for a fact work for both, because I work cross-platform.
So if you're
Yeah.
going to format a large drive and you'd like to be cross-platform possible, then exFAT's the way to go.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
It's EXFAT.
exFAT,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
It's like
Thank you.
extreme.
That's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of the new drives are being formatted
works
natively.
That's great.
Pretty much any drive you buy now, it's been out for more than a couple months, will be, so you can open up on either. So it shouldn't be a problem at
Fantastic.
all. Okay,
And, guys, you also have to work backwards and think about your workflow as to, but even though everyone's gonna be working on Premiere, and Dan, you can speak to that as well. You know, as far as your codecs and, you know, everything playing nicely together. So, we'll talk about that, but that's very important.
excellent. Okay, so we'll go past record media select, record scene, name and number. You can go through and start naming all this stuff. It's kind of hard to do with this thing. So my preference would be that you have a piece of paper and you write down corresponding takes rather than try and type it into here a little button at a time.
And, you know, the more anal retentive you are about that, the better off you will be 2 weeks later. No matter how well you think, oh, it's gonna be a cinch. In 2 weeks, when you sit down in front of your computer and start, you know, putting everything together, to really be clear.
Mhm.
Make sure whoever's on sound is really clear, basically.
Who would do that on crew? Would that be a scripty thing, or?
I would say that it's your sound person and your DIT working together.
Yeah, you got the sound recordist taking that kind of notes, and they're making sure with the DIT that everything is lining up the same way with the same name. So, like I said, you can go through and name all that stuff, but the only thing you might want to do on this is load it from the compact flash card if you wanted to, if you already had takes in order, or maybe start with channel 1. There's various options, but for the most part, I think you can generally ignore that and just keep track of it manually. Much safer. Okay, record track names. Similar issue. You could name your left and right channel. Really not that important, just as long as you note it manually when you're writing stuff down. I think it's way too hard to write all that, type all that stuff into here.
Cheney, Obama.
Exactly. Well, what's the center button do?
Right.
Who's in the
There
center?
isn't one anymore.
I'll put you in.
Okay. Record take name and number. Similar thing. let's hit that button. You can do various options with that. Again, not that useful. You can reset the take names. That can be useful. You can reset it back to 0. So rather than starting with take 92 at the beginning of day 2, you can start with take 1 at the beginning of day 2. Or scene 2, however you want to do it. And that's really easy. Let's check on that. And there's some options. When daily folders change, when the scene is changed, and so on. You have to just dig in there and take a look at those options on your own. So many options on this thing. Record pre-roll time. Don't worry about that. Just always be rolling when the director says roll. Record dither. Whoops, wrong button. Don't worry about that either. That's just something if you're
Algorithms.
exactly, it's boring stuff. Leave it off. You can have a record timer. Nothing to worry about there. That means you can set it to go record in 20 minutes or something. Useless. It has,
I have to go to the bathroom.
exactly.
I'll be back in 20 minutes. 21.
I'm sure somebody has a use for that somewhere.
Somewhere.
Well, if you're a
Maybe,
private
you know,
detective.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you know that guy who, that remarkable man, even though I don't think he used sound, but he set up for the glaciers all over the world.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
What's that?
Chasing Ice.
Yeah.
Chasing
Yeah.
Ice. Oh, that was wonderful. But anyway, that, I don't know if he used sound. I don't think he did actually, but I don't know. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Oh, excuse me. Wow, cool.
That was scary.
Somebody had a bad idea.
So the next button up is a input routing. Input routing is important. You should always leave it as its default setting, but you want to make sure that channel 1 or the left channel goes to the left channel, channel 2 goes to the right channel. You shouldn't need to change it, but you get enough students with one of these things, and things get changed around in crazy ways sometimes. As we've seen with Zoom recorders over the years. Okay, so
I mean, would you say that after you get one of these back from a shoot, that maybe the wisest thing to do is to go right back to default settings?
that's what I
to
always
be-
do. I
Okay.
always default the settings and then check them out myself and make sure that they're the way I want them to be.
Great, okay.
You don't have to go through every menu item. You'll find out the 6 or 7 you need to adjust pretty quickly.
Do you also reformat the card once you?
I usually do. Once I load that audio off and take a look at it, listen to it, then I'll probably reformat the card. Otherwise, you'll get clogged up tape numbers and get confused.
And how long do you think your card will be reliable for?
I think those compact flash cards will be reliable for years.
Okay.
I think the hard drive is maybe a different story, especially if it's being bounced around in a bag. I would say you get a couple years out of it tops.
Cool. Okay.
And I think FireWire can be kind of weird sometimes like that. But compact flash cards, I've never had one go bad in using them for 7 or 8 years. Okay, so 1A, 2B, always. And it should be like that anyways. Check that. Okay. On input 1 and 2, you can turn fan and power off or on. If you're using a mic input, that may be necessary. Next up is a control for mic inputs limiter. I would recommend avoiding recording with a limiter. If you're doing broadcast audio, maybe so, but for film audio, you don't want to have a limiter because you could really mess the sound up and not realize you're messing the sound up so much.
And also you'll want the dynamics.
Absolutely.
Nothing makes an actor more angry than feeling that his or her audio has been squashed because you lose the dynamic of the scene, you lose the dynamic of the moment when it suddenly goes big. So Yeah, a limiter or a compressor, especially a compressor, it's so dangerous. Just know the scene, watch the rehearsal, know you and your boom operator, be very aware of when someone's gonna explode if you have that kind of an issue for a limiter.
Yeah, I would say the limiter's only typically used in something like somebody's a reporter's broadcasting and you're in a fast hurry, you throw the mic on and it doesn't matter if it's limited on TV. It's
Right.
compressed like crazy on TV anyways. Okay, but no for film or TV. Okay, the mic inputs have low cuts. Of course, you would typically want to turn those on if you're doing dialogue as well.
Yeah,
And-
I want to say one thing quickly. I'm a big believer in that. The rumble that you can get out, the low end that you can lose, eventually will be very helpful to you. I wouldn't go any further than that. Like someone like Mr. Maitland, he's been doing this, his entire life, literally since he was a boy, because that's when I knew him. So he has the kind of ear where he can EQ right there, and in his eyes, he's actually working hand in hand with whatever post house will end up using this. I would say be very wary about any kind of EQ except getting rid of your extreme lows.
Yeah, it really takes knowing your listening system really, really well and having a lot of experience.
But would we actually want to turn it on the recorder if we're using the low cut filter on the mixer?
Well, the cool thing about this recorder is that the low cut filter, if you turn it on, it's only on the mic inputs, and we're going into the line inputs
gotcha.
typically, which I think is a really neat feature of this.
So we only have to worry about the low cut on the recorder if we're doing mic input into it?
That's right.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and this you can have separate low cut filters in each. There's also the ability to adjust the microphone low cut frequency. Just keep 80 hertz in mind. That's a good stable
Anything under
frequency.
80, yeah,
It's
you won't
not-
want it.
Yeah,
You just won't want it.
your voice doesn't have anything below 80 hertz.
And whatever's going by, you won't want it. I mean, if you're making music and you want your chest to pound in hip hop, you'll want it, but not for this.
Okay. Mic input one gain range. That would, if you had a really, really quiet mic, you might adjust that to a higher gain range. If you had a really, really low mic, you might adjust it to a lower gain range. But for the most part, you'll be fine. You'll be adjusting your mic gains with the mixer. If you're using the recorder by itself, you'll use the knobs built into the recorder for that. So that's just sort of redundant extra knobs or extra controls for weird situations. Input 1 or 2 source. This has a couple different inputs. It has 2 line level inputs and mic level input. I'm sorry, it has a micro line level input, a line level input, and a digital input. So when we're using the mixer, you'll always be in line 1. If you're using a microphone, the recorder, you'll be in mic input. There is some crazy connector on this to get you extra line ins, but I can't even foresee any need for that. So if you were to hit that source button, you would be able to select analog or digital or so on. Input 1 or 2 linking, you could have both channels be controlled by one thing. Don't worry about that. You always want to monitor your levels independently, make sure you're getting good levels. Don't rely on the machine to do that for you. Then there's the similar controls for the line input gain control. Again, you don't need to really adjust those. They'll mostly be adjusted with these knobs unless you're in a really odd situation.
So which headphone output would you tell them to use?
That's a great question. Do you foresee having a mixer and a boom operator, or one person doing both?
What do you guys think? It's your films. Yeah, it would seem to me that you'd have a mixer and an op and a boom op.
I've got several boom operators.
Good. Usually there would be 2. Imagine trying to get your mix set between a lavalier and a boom while holding the boom, and you realize the lav's too loud, and you go to change it, and your boom's in your frame, and the take's ruined, everybody's mad at you. So if that's the case, boom operator needs to hear what's going on. Boom operator gets the headphone feed from the mixer. The recorder gets the feed from the actual recorder. That way,
Because this is what you want to be listening to if you're sitting here with this thing.
yeah, always.
You can be fooled that everything's just wonderful. And so just make sure your mixers has his phones or her phones coming out of the mixer.
Absolutely.
Excuse me, out of the
Recorder.
recorder. Sorry.
The boom operator it can be handy for the boom operator to have the sound from the mixer because they can crank it up loud
Are
and really hear what's going
are
on.
those two headphone jacks that you can?
There's only one per unit.
Okay.
But you can go to Sweetwater and you can, you know.
You can check out from the lab splitters.
Great,
Um,
because having splitters is never a bad idea.
Yeah.
Never, yeah.
a lot of times, the director might want to hear the sound.
Yeah.
So having a splitter and some long cables could be very, very, very handy. You might run out of, you can't split it 10 times. You could probably get 2 or 3 headphones before it starts to overload a little bit. But these are pretty robust. Okay, gain controls, input 1 and 2 delay, blah, blah, blah. Just don't mess with that stuff. Trouble, big trouble. You can dictate the maximum file size, just leave it at its default. You want it to be as large as it can be in case you need to roll and roll and roll. But realistically, that's not a problem.
And the reason is because, let's say you're doing a scene and your actor, 3/4 of the way through, loses concentration and something happens. Don't let that stop the scene or let you cut if you've really started to get momentum and it becomes an inside joke. Stop it right away, take it back a few, and keep rolling. That way also, you'll still have plenty of time for your file, for that particular file. That's why you want a large file, which is what's so great about the digital world.
Absolutely. Imagine that on tape. You're stuck.
Tape and film.
Right, film, of course.
Short. You guys would be, using maybe 100-foot loads. You'd be, go around begging for film. It's amazing what we used to do. You can get half of a take. It's unbelievable.
Excuse me. With film switching to digital, like more and more digital now, is there a difference with how audio is used with that?
No, it's really the same thing.
Okay.
Film will record time code into it. Basically, you can record a time code track or sprockets. I mean, if things running at 24 frames per second, it's 24 frames per second. And the film cameras are super duper accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe a 50-year-old camera isn't as much, but they all sync up very, very easily.
Okay.
And in a film, you'd have a time code burned in off the visual area. You would see 1 hour, 10 minutes, 23 frames or whatever. And you could manually line that up if you needed to. Okay, so there are some options for naming folders and files and stuff like that. Again, if you want to get into that, explore it. But for the most part, look at the screen, keep track, take notes. Way too complex to reset that every time.
Can I also say, take notes that you can actually read? As weird as that sounds, I've just seen too many times, like even that night, us looking at things that our mixer had written down, and it's like, I have no idea what this is, do you? And the mixer would go, no, because everyone's working so quickly. So even something as simple as that is important.
Do you have take sheets for them, or is that their responsibility to create their own?
Their responsibility as of now.
Great.
But I'm trying to make things as I don't wanna say easy, I wanna say as wise as possible,
Yeah, sure.
so they can get good stuff and feel good about it, so.
Great. So we get into a section where there's just tons and tons of stuff. But one important thing here is our time code frame rates. Okay, time code frame rates. Let's go ahead and hit that button. So what do you think? Time code frame rates.
23.176.
All right. Unless you're doing,
I mean, it matters what,
Between
right. So 23.976 for HD video, right? Let's go in here. It'll probably default to 2997. So you'll need to go in there and set it up, scroll through 23.976, hit OK. Easy enough, right? That is good and very, very important. Next up, timecode mode. Let's see what our options are. Off, free run jam once, record run, 24-hour run, external timecode, I'll record an external timecode, and so on. Now, depending on how you're using this, the mode could change. But for the most part, we're going to want to use this as our master timecode generator. In that case, we typically want it to be on free run, because it's just going to start going and it's going to run until you turn the machine off. When you turn it back on, it's going to start running. Let's say you turn it off at 6 o'clock, turn it back on at 8 o'clock, the clock's going to be at 8 o'clock still, keeping everything in time, which is what you want for sure. If you're using this as the timecode slave device, you might want to set it to free run jam once, or record run. But for the most part, you'll want to have it on free run. I'm going to go and select that for now. Okay. Timecode hold off. You can just leave that on as standard default. User bits and timecode is, you can just leave that as well. You can adjust some things to make it more useful, but again, pretty advanced. No real need to do that. Timecode jam menu. Again, if you're using this as the slave device, you might want to make some adjustments here, but let me go back here. It's hard for me to see upside down and read this upside down.
you need oxygen too.
Okay, so one of the things on here is important, jam zeros. I'm going to go ahead and put it on jam zeros, hit OK, and that sets it back to 0. So now we're at 0 hours, and that can be good. Another thing I'm going to show you with this is jam value. Oops, wrong one. Edit value. Okay, so if I go to edit value, I can set the hour I want to begin with. A lot of times, you don't want to begin with hour 0. That can be tricky for some editors. They want to begin at hour 1 and not
They
hour
always
0.
want to be at hour 1.
Right.
Yeah, I've actually never worked with anyone who didn't start with hour 1.
Okay, great. So that's good to know. Edit values, we're going to want to
By the
adjust
way,
that.
I can't tell you why. I wish I knew I had that knowledge.
I think I had that knowledge 15 years ago,
Yeah.
but it's gone.
Yeah.
It's great. It's very important for audio, but less for video. Okay, so we set that hour 1 and hit, whoops, done. Maybe. Trying to hit done. There we go. Toggle through and then hit done. And now you can see that the time code down below is running. It's just been running for a minute now. And, oh, we need to go back actually. My fault. Since we reset its start point, we need to go back to the jam menu and go up to jam zeros and hit OK. And it's not doing what I want it to do.
Can I ask you a foolish question? while you're doing
Certainly.
As far as its memory is concerned, once it is told what time of day it is,
Mm-hmm.
What is its memory capability?
This is a nice battery backup memory, so it should be able to retain all that data until you do a system reset. Okay. There we go. So I'm just gonna hit jam return 0 right here. There we go.
John,
That's, and now we're ready.
the
At 1 hour.
the manual for this, will it be? Can we slip it in for everyone who goes out? So
Great,
that
yeah.
make sure that.
Yes, and Norbert and I are gonna work on a cheat sheet as well, just like a one-page laminated thing that gives us all the important things. Yes, of course.
Everyone just took a breath. I think.
That's what some of the video is about, is to create a good cheat sheet for that.
Great.
And I'll make sure that the important things are in there, and just remember that there's some other things that are less important that could be useful.
Jake or John, is there a PDF of the manual?
We can get one out, I can get one to you quickly, so we can circulate that.
Yeah, we can
Look.
maybe you get that and put it up on the Encore site or something.
Yeah, maybe we can even, I could go online and find it and like just download it, put it up on
Yeah.
resources.
Sure, I'm sure they have.
One
quite-
more thing for you guys that I get all my
All the
emails.
things.
Dang,
Dang.
resources? Leave me.
I never noticed things. I'm joking.
Honor.
That was a good one.
No, it's just, Carla's going, what are you doing? It's 3 in the morning. I want to make sure.
Oops.
Don't go rowdy about it.
I just have that vicious streak.
It's funny.
Okay, so next up is timecode display mode. You can have the big numbers appear above or below the record numbers. So if you go back to the main screen here, we'll see that we have the time below, which is our timecode running, the time above, which is our record time. I would leave it like this, although maybe you want to see the big timecode for some reason. Let's see. Then we have a lot of other buttons and controls, output source, attenuators, all the stuff that we really don't need. There is the time date mode, 12 or 24 hours, useful if you want to keep everything locked to a clock time on the day. And you can also record date and year and stuff like that in the audio file. And then some mechanical controls for how the meters work, how bright the display is, et cetera, et cetera. Most of that stuff is not that important to us. So what I would do at this point is, and there's a format control, general controls. What I would do is when you get a hold of this, spend a few minutes, scroll through the menu items, take a look at it. But I think we've gone over the basic things that you need to really, really use to record in this.
I would say, guys, when you check out, and if you're gonna check out, let's say a day early, and I don't mean a day early before you go, I mean a day early so you can do some camera tests. Make sure that your mixer does audio tests, and everything, you guys get it, and so you're not wasting the first half of your first day.
Yeah, and take some time that night to drop those files into a program and make sure they sync up.
Right.
Because if you have something set wrong, it could not be synchronized. For example, if you set this at 24 frames per second rather than 23.976, and you had the timecode synced, it might seem like it's synced for a while, and then it's not anymore.
Right.
And then you have to do a lot of manual alignment, which is a pain.
So how do you make sure the time code on that recorder is synced with the camera?
That is the next thing up, in
Okay.
fact. Okay, so this thing has a timecode output, and